Hello. So today I'm gonna attempt at least to answer the question of why do most metalheads stay away from mainstream music? Like that's a question I've been getting since I was a kid. Why do you hate mainstream music? Like what do you have against mainstream music? Like why do you think it's so bad? And I don't think it's bad per se, because I think there's some legitimate genuine mainstream artists who make good music. But I think the answer to this question is a bit more complicated, at least for me. So when I was growing up, I got into Metallica, I got into Iron Maiden, I got into Black Sabbath, the typical entry points into metal music, okay? And so I have an older sister, who at the time was into more mainstream music, and it was a lot of stuff associated with Disney. So Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, Jonas Brothers, all those bands and artists. And I do regret not getting into Paramore, because my sister was a big Paramore fan, and I realized now that Paramore is actually pretty cool. And so I guess typical sibling rivalry, she's listening to more mainstream stuff and I'm listening to more obscure, lesser known stuff. And so I guess it just, made me get into the genre more, just listening to more metal music, because, it was aggressive, it was obscure, honest, very expressive, really violent, and all this other stuff. So yeah, as a kid, I loved all those reasons for listening to metal music. It was really chaotic, it was really aggressive, really angry, and really energetic. But I guess in my teenage years, that reason became kind of diluted, and I don't think these were the reasons anymore why I was listening to metal music. And especially in my late teenage years, I would listen to metal music, but as you grow older, you can just look up other bands and other stuff, but why was I still listening to metal music at this time? What was the reason now? As a kid, I thought it was cool, but what about now? Why do I still listen to metal music? And so, interestingly enough, just around the same time, I guess, where, I was, maybe subconsciously trying to figure out a reason why I should listen to metal music, I actually ended up buying my first electric guitar. So, yeah, I guess at the age of, 17 and 18 or something, I got my first electric guitar. And so, yeah, I wanted to be a guitar player, and, what other genre do I listen to than the genre that is primarily dominated by the guitar, which is metal? And so I now had a great reason to continue listening to metal music, which is the fact that now I wanted to learn actual riffs and stuff from the bands I listen to. And because I started learning guitar, I started listening to other bands, bands like Tool. Adam Jones is a really big inspiration for me when it comes to playing the guitar. I try to emulate him as much as possible. And so yeah, the guitar and just getting the guitar was a huge reason for me to continue listening to metal music, because metal is dominated by the guitar. And guess what is not dominated by the guitar? Mainstream music. You don't see this a lot, in the hands of mainstream artists. Sure, guitar is probably used in a lot of these songs and stuff, but you just don't see, the guitar. The guitar is more of a symbol for metal and rock. It's not really something you see in pop music and more popular music, so to speak. And so yeah, getting the guitar just gave me a fresh perspective on, the genre, and I started focusing on things I did not focus on before, rhythm, melody, harmony, all this other stuff. Just because I wanted to get better at the guitar, I had to start paying attention to metal as a genre much more carefully. And it is a genre that if you listen to more carefully, it reveals itself in the most interesting ways. You'll hear rhythms and all this other stuff in very different ways when you're actually trying to learn that stuff on an instrument. And then yeah, 2020, the pandemic happened, and so I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I wanted to learn how to record the guitar. And I figured out that I need something called an interface, and I need to learn what a DAW is. I need to know what compression, EQing, and all this other stuff is. And so just by being someone who listens to metal music, and as someone who obviously looks up interviews of the bands I listen to and all this other stuff, there's something about metal music that a lot of artists and bands, when they talk about the music and the way they write it, they talk about the technical stuff. They don't shy away from it. They talk about the guitars that they use, they talk about the guitar cabinets, the amps, the plugins, the DAWs, whether the drums are sampled or programmed, or it's very technical stuff. And it's not something which I think is in conversation with a lot of other artists of other genres. It's I've just noticed personally that in metal music you hear a lot of technical speak much more, because people just like to kind of, I guess, talk about it, rhythm and polyrhythms, and they'll talk about song structure and all this interesting stuff. And so because it was the pandemic and I had a lot of free time on my hands, I learned all this stuff. And so just by listening to metal music, and just by, actively following the bands and artists I was interested in, I stumbled into music production and I learned all this stuff, which inevitably led me to making music of my own, led me to the creation of this channel. I learned along the way of making music and learning music production that I can do metal vocals. And so I had to learn how to, produce vocals, how to mix them, how to EQ them, and all this other stuff. I had to learn all this, and it just and I just stumbled into one thing after another just because, it was metal music. Metal music was a driving force in me picking up the guitar. It was a driving force in me learning how to produce music, because I was just, curious, how do you make something sound so heavy and crushing, but it doesn't destroy my ears, right? It's all interesting stuff, and it's all things that fueled my curiosity of I want to learn how to do this. And so I learned how to do all this stuff. I learned what plugins to use, what DAW I want to use, how to record guitar, how to use an interface, how to record guitar, all this other stuff. I just learned it. It's so inherent in the metal community about all this technical stuff, and I was just curious enough to see it through. And so yeah, all this stuff prior to this was a bit of a tangent, but it'll make sense, at least for me, when it comes to answering the question of why do people who listen to metal music tend to, stay away from mainstream music, or at least not gravitate towards it. So the first thing is something which I actually tell a lot of people when it comes to the actual process of making music, as someone who makes music and someone who consumes music. Making good music is not hard. It's actually very easy when you have two things, in my opinion. I think when you have a lot of attention on you and when you have a lot of money, making good music is not hard. It's actually pretty simple. It's very easy. Genuinely nowadays, you just need a laptop and an internet connection and you can make music. In my opinion, that is the simplest way I can explain to someone how easy it is to make music. But when you have a lot of attention on you and when you have a lot of money, you can supercharge that. Because I want you to do something. I want you to go to Spotify or any streaming service of your choice. Find a really big song, millions of streams on it. I want you to right click on it, show credits, and just see how many songwriters and people are affiliated with this singular song. Most of the times you'll see 2 to 3 people just being songwriters and working on this thing. But then for sure at the back end, there's a whole team of people who are mixing this, engineering the sounds, coming up with the melodies, the harmonies, the chords, and all this other stuff. There's a whole team of people who are utilized for a single song. And for me personally, I have a bit of an issue with that, because if I'm listening to a mainstream song, right, and there's a drum part I really like, or a synth line or a bass line, I have no idea who's playing that. Because when it comes to pop music, at least, there's usually a person doing vocals, right? But the song is much more than the vocals. You have a drummer, you have synthesizers, you have keyboard players, you have all this other stuff in the background. But there's no affiliation or association of the people who did all those things with the song. When the song releases, it's just the artist's name who did the vocals, but the song is so much more than that. And so I have a weird issue with that. I can't really explain it, but when I'm listening to Meshuggah, when the drums are going crazy, I know exactly who's doing the drums. And so building off the first point, the second reason why I don't gravitate as much towards mainstream music is because of how much money, marketing, algorithms, and streaming services dominate when it comes to mainstream music. There's so much money thrown towards a song to push it and to, make it appeal to as many people as possible, and to also make the song as safe and as digestible as possible, so that it's not too far out there, it's not too experimental, it's safe, it's been done before, and people will like it. I don't like that personally, because I think it dilutes the actual quality and character of music, because you're just incentivizing music to chase streams and money, and not actually making music for the sake of making music. And yeah, that's the reason why I love metal music, because no one makes metal music for the money, fame, or attention. There's actually a great quote from the Periphery guitarist Mark Holcomb in the Making of P3 Select Difficulty documentary. He says that no one gets into metal for the money.
We're not doing it for monetary reasons. If we were in it for the money, then we'd be the hugest idiots in the world, because nobody makes money in metal. I just think it's what we all know how to do. It's like carpentry or any trade in life. it's what we do, and we don't know how to do anything else really.
And I think that's a great way to summarize why people make metal music, because there's no money in metal music. It's like not a popular genre. Most metal bands have to rely on touring for most of the year to make ends meet. And so if you make metal music, you are truly just doing it because you love the genre or you just love making music. And so when I personally listen to metal music, I know the person on the other end or the band on the other end is not doing it for the money or fame, because again, you don't get a lot of that when it comes to metal music. You just do that because you love the genre or you just love making music. And I also personally think that metal music showcases probably the best musicians in the world. You have Tosin Abasi of Animals as Leaders, one of the best guitarists in the world. You have Tim Henson, also a great, phenomenal guitarist. You have Phil Bozeman, probably one of my favorite deathcore vocalists. You have Matt Gartzka, insane drummer. You have really, really technical, really gifted, talented individuals who are insane at their instruments and their craft. Metal showcases that so much. The genre actually pushes these people to the most extreme limits, and it just creates amazing and just such interesting music. And I think as someone again who makes music, I think metal music also has probably some of the best mixers, producers, people like Buster Ordelholm of Humanity's Last Breath, and you have obviously Aaron Nolly Get Good of Periphery, and just insane people who make really, really technical and really chaotic music sound really, really good, really heavy, really nice. Metal is obviously a very, very difficult genre to mix and produce for, because everything sounds so chaotic, and to make that sound so controlled and so tight, it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of talent. And so yeah, I think metal music also has the best when it comes to sound engineers, mixers, producers. And also metal music is fresh, it's experimental. Thornhill, for example, released their third album this year, I believe, Bodies, and that sounds nothing like the previous record, and that record sounds nothing like the previous record. Metal is a genre that is always fresh and experimental. People are constantly innovating, they're constantly changing up their sounds, because that's just how metal music is. It constantly evolves, it constantly surprises you. People end up doing weird stuff for one album, then they go back to their sound. It's very interesting. And as someone who listens to metal music a lot, there's very little reason for me to gravitate towards more mainstream stuff, because again, in metal music you have bands like Bring Me the Horizon and Sleep Token, and then you have bands like Meshuggah, Whitechapel, so you really have everything you really need, right? And so I personally find very little reason to gravitate towards more mainstream stuff, which is very safe, it's very digestible, it's supposed to appeal to the most amount of people, because again, you need those streams, you need to make money off that stuff. Metal music is just weird and fun. It's constantly weird and fun. People just do fun stuff for the sake of making weird music. And so yeah, I think those are some, good reasons at least of why I personally at least don't gravitate towards mainstream music as much. I'm not saying that mainstream music is all bad. I truly think there are some genuine, legitimate artists out there who truly love making music and they do it for the right reasons. But I think for the most part, it's not a great space, I think, because again, it's driven by marketing, it's driven by streaming, driven by algorithms. It's music being made for the wrong reasons, and it's being pushed through all the wrong mediums. It's being pushed through to people through algorithms and money, and I just have concerns about that. So those are some reasons of why at least I personally don't gravitate towards mainstream music as much. If there's some reasons that you can come up with as someone who listens to metal music, let me know in the comments down below. And so yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you liked this video. Like and subscribe if you did, and yeah, that's about it. See you.